this introduction video. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. This event was organized and put together by the BARD International Solidarity Movement. BARD ISM is a chapter of the larger International Solidarity Movement, which puts internationals on the ground in Palestine to take part in active, nonviolent resistance to the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land. You can check them out at palsolidarity.org. This talk is also co-sponsored by the BARD Human Rights Project. You can check them out at bard.edu/HRP. In the back of the room, there are organizers for the U.S. Boat to Gaza holding a bucket for donations. These donations will go straight to the U.S. Boat to Gaza, a campaign to send an American boat to Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid to the besieged people of Palestine. I'm told that the name of the boat they're sending is the Audacity of Hope. Amongst the U.S. Boat to Gaza's organizers are former State Department official Ann Wright, who resigned from the State Department in opposition to the Iraq War, and was also on this summer's Gaza Flotilla. The U.S. boat needs your support, and the people of Gaza need your support as well. So please donate and put the money in that bucket back there, and you can check them out at ustogaza.org. Edward Peck was aboard the American delegation of passengers aboard this summer's ill-fated Gaza Flotilla. That delegation was sent by the Free Palestine movement. The FPM is planning more nonviolent activist projects to support human rights in Palestine. You can check them out at freepalestinemovement.org. Now then, on your seats you'll find several handouts. These are excerpts from the recent United Nations investigation regarding the Israeli raid on the Gaza Flotilla. This includes the UN's accusation that passengers on the Gaza Flotilla were summarily executed and shot in the head at point-blank range while they were on the ground. That includes an American citizen born in Troy, New York, Furkan Dogan. Ladies and gentlemen, the people that I've mentioned thus far, from the ISM to the United Nations, from Furkan Dogan to the U.S. Boat to Gaza, are often painted as extremists and biased and distorted simply for taking a position or drawing a conclusion on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We come off apparently as extreme. This, among other reasons, is why we brought you a diplomat. Edward Peck is a former U.S. diplomat and was in the diplomatic service for 32 years. He is the former chief ambassador to Iraq and Mauritania, as well as an embassy officer in Sweden, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Egypt. He's the former deputy director of the Cabinet Task Force on Terrorism, deputy coordinator for global covert operations, director of Egyptian affairs at the State Department, liaison officer to the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon, and a fellow at the Institute for Higher Defense Studies at the National Defense University. He speaks Arabic, French, Spanish, and Swedish. In retirement, he has been the executive secretary of the American Academy of Diplomacy, among other pursuits. This summer, he joined human rights workers, Nobel laureates, former and current members of state, activists, and humanitarian workers in taking part in the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, an aid convoy of 6 ships that was attempting to deliver aid, food and humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Since 2007, the entire Gaza Strip has been under an illegal Israeli military blockade, which has prevented Palestinians from having access to medical supplies, building equipment, toys, musical instruments, chickens, cows, horses, chocolate, and various spices, in what a former Israeli official termed putting the Palestinians on a diet. The UN has called Blockade of Gaza a human dignity crisis. As you may know, the 6-ship flotilla was raided in international waters by the Israeli military. The raid had no legitimacy in international law, and in the process, Israeli soldiers shot and killed 9 activists, including several with close-range gunshots to the head. Just mentioning these facts, emphasizing them, pointing to international law, etc., has gotten me and others like me, including Edward Peck, labeled as extremists. After all, there are 2 sides to everything, right? Martin Luther King Jr. had this exact same problem. Martin Luther King Jr. gave me some advice. He told me and the rest of the world in his letter from Birmingham jail. He said, "I was initially disappointed as being categorized as an extremist. As I continued to think about the matter, I gradually gained this measure of satisfaction from the label. Was not Jesus an extremist for love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. The question is not whether or not we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or the extension of justice?" He also says, "I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's greatest stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. People in the middle prefer to look at the formal issue that there are two sides to the conflict, including this conflict. And their issue with these two sides, as Martin Luther King Jr. mentions, is tension. As such, any extreme is equally wrong because it's causing tension. And it's being too loud, and it needs to have the volume turned down. But when one looks at the substance of these two extremes, only someone who wants injustice to prevail, who wants the absence of tension instead of the presence of justice, can tell us that taking a side is inherently wrong. The moderate just wants to get rid of tension, as opposed to fixing the tension with justice. That's why he doesn't like extremists like us, who have only committed the crime of looking at the two sides, drawing a logical and sensible conclusion, and as a result, taking action. Now is not the time to turn down the volume. Now is the time to turn it up. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Ladies and gentlemen, Edward Peck.
That was very stirring. And I don't speak that way because I am a diplomat. I'm here to talk about serious subjects, and I take them all very seriously, but I have a very strong tendency towards a sense of humor. So you will excuse me if during I have to have you out here by 11:30, that's what you said. Yeah, so I may inject a little humor from time to time. Forgive me for that. You may all know that the definition of a diplomat is someone who can tell you to go to hell in a manner that makes you look forward to the trip. I like another one even more. A diplomat is a man who can convince his wife that she looks terrible in diamonds. The Gaza Flotilla. I have lived in and worked with people in 6 Arab countries overseas. And in Washington, I worked extensively on Arab-American relations and that sort of issue. And I have no fear whatsoever in introducing myself to American audiences as a Middle East expert. Because unlike the overwhelming majority of Americans, I know where it is. And this, of course, is one of the problems that we deal with in this country. We live in a country which is glorious in so many ways, but most people don't care a lot about or pay much attention to or are not deeply interested in what it's like in the rest of the world because we have it so good here. So in May of this year, I was telephoned by people I had never met representing an organization of which I had not previously heard, the Free Palestine Movement. The flotilla to Gaza was organized by Europeans. They put it all together. I think there were 17 different countries involved in putting it all together. And at the last minute, relatively speaking, the Free Palestine Movement was offered an opportunity to put 5 people on this crowded little ship on which I sailed. I was not on the Mavi Marmara. That left from Istanbul. The ship that I sailed on left from Athens. 2 ships left from Athens. Our little passenger boat, which consisted essentially of that many plastic chairs on the deck because it's a boat that the Greeks used to go from island to island, 2.5-hour, 3-hour trip. When I first saw that ship in the harbor at Athens, and I said, where are the showers? And they said, showers? I said, well, where do we change clothes? And they said, change clothes? So everybody brought a couple of boxes of baby wipes instead. And we slept essentially on the floor of the ship in order to get to Gaza. We were on that ship for about a week for various reasons. The other ship that left from Athens was carrying the supplies, the humanitarian goods. We had 126 electric wheelchairs, 155 prefabricated houses, 2 water purification systems, and huge masses of medicine that we were going to take to Gaza, where, as you understand, things have been rather difficult for the last couple of years. When the Israelis heard about this, they told the organizers of the flotilla that what they should do is turn these materials over to the Israeli government, and they would see that it got to Gaza. The organizers said, well, we're bringing stuff that you don't normally let in anyway, so we prefer to take it ourselves. You should know that the 126 wheelchairs did get to Gaza after the batteries were taken out. On that morning when the raid came, the predictions of some of us were fulfilled. An awful lot of people on the ship that I sailed on, there were 48 of us from 12 different countries. And a number of the people on board that little boat were folks that I would describe as fuzzy puppies, in the sense that they believed only good things about everyone. So there was a meeting we had one night to discuss how to provide passive resistance. You know, the business where you lock arms to keep them from taking over the wheelhouse and just go limp if they're trying to take you away in order to make it more difficult for them. So we offered passive resistance, at least some of us did. We didn't have much chance. But the people on the ship said, surely, Ambassador Peck, this is an opportunity that the Israeli government will seize in order to be perceived as good guys. To let the humanitarian goods go in, they can keep the people out. But to let the humanitarian cargo ships go in and get good PR points everywhere. And I said, well, I hope sincerely that you are right, but I'd like you to make a list for me of the last times that the Israeli government appeared to be interested as being seen as nice guys. Because the Israeli response has always been announced beforehand as a deterrent. That if you provoke us, our response will be disproportionate. I offer you Lebanon twice and Gaza as indications that they mean it. They are serious about it in the belief that if there is enough violence to the provocation, it will not happen again. So I made this comment, and one of the people there said, well, they wouldn't dare attack this ship because there are 5 Americans on it. And sitting next to me was a man named Joe Medors, a wounded survivor of the Israeli attack on the Uss Liberty in 1967. How many of you have heard of that? 1967 war, the Israeli Air Force attacked a U.S. Navy ship in the Eastern Mediterranean. It was the only U.S. Navy ship in the Eastern Mediterranean. It was a ship engaged in espionage with radio antennas of all kinds. This is being done on purpose, I'm sure. That's paranoia. The wonderful advantage of being paranoid is that everything fits. Joe Medors is a wounded survivor of, and the president of the Liberty Survivors Association. In 1967, the Israeli Air Force and Navy attacked the U.S. Navy ship. They killed 34 American servicemen and wounded 170. The worst disaster that the U.S. Navy has ever experienced in peacetime, and by far and away the worst disaster that was ever inflicted upon the U.S. Navy by an ally. But you don't read about that much because it's one of the things that people don't like to talk about, try to appear moderate. Anyway, Joe Medors said, well, I wouldn't count too much on the fact that there are Americans here. And he is now the only man I know who has twice been attacked on the high seas by the Israelis and lived to talk about it. They came early in the morning. Our ship was small enough so that unlike what you saw in the video and have seen elsewhere, they didn't have to climb up the sides or come down by ropes because they could step from the deck of their ship right onto the deck of our ship. I was in the part of the ship called the saloon, if you will. And we looked up, and there they were. And it was over for those of us on the main deck because the Israelis were there, armed, masked. They all wore masks. They all had weapons. They also had paint guns, which were bolted to the submachine guns they carried. On the upper deck, the people were able to provide passive resistance and paid the price for it. When the ship finally arrived at Ashdod, the first people allowed off were the wounded. We had a man on crutches. We had the captain of the ship with his neck in a brace. We had people with arms and slings, bandages on foreheads and limping because the commandos did not play nice with the people providing passive resistance. But they captured that ship without bloodshed. One stun grenade, a number of people bleeding. We had 2 doctors on board, a Swede and a Hungarian, who were members of the delegation. And they took over our ship. The Mavi Marmara was not close by, and because of the way we were handled under guard, I did not know until the airplane that they put me on landed in Newark that anybody had been killed. That information was not available to me under guard on the ship, at the airport, or on the plane. When they marched us off the ship, the 5 of us from the Free Palestine movement had agreed amongst ourselves that we would sign the document that they were preparing for everybody. By the way, we got there and processed out before the Mavi Marmara arrived in Ashdod. But 2 of the people had already been through this process before. They said, sign the document and we'll all be sent home. If you don't sign it, you go to prison. Well, interestingly enough, there was a man there from the foreign ministry to meet me as I got off the ship because they knew there was an American former diplomat on board. I still carry a diplomatic passport, having served as a career member of the Foreign Service who served as an ambassador. But there was nobody there from the American embassy, which was interesting. Not surprising, but interesting. So they marched me up to the table and they said, sign this document. It was in Hebrew, which I do not read. So I signed it. This is an interesting thing. Yeah. And they said, okay. He said, now we're going to expel you from the country. I said, why? He said, you have broken an Israeli law. I said, I've been here 6 minutes. What is Israeli law? You have entered the country illegally. I said, well, now wait a minute. You attacked our boat in international waters with armed soldiers who took possession of that boat, and under armed guard, we were brought here to Ashdod, and I metaphorically marched ashore with my hands in the air and a gun in my back, and you call that entering the country illegally? He said, yes. I said, we're not speaking the same language. You forced me to come here. I did not come by choice. Nonetheless, 2 of us, Joe Medders, the veteran from the Liberty, and I, were put on an airplane several hours later, having been held in custody until that time, and flown back to the States. When I got here, when I got home in Maryland, I took the metro home from the airport, and as I came around the corner of my street, there was a television camera crew on the front lawn. They knew I was coming back. I stopped and spoke to them. I invited them into the house, and my wife, the most highly organized person in the world, was very upset with me because she had 3 other television stations that she'd already booked me for. This was going to interfere with the schedule that she'd set. I spent the next 2 weeks flying here and there and speaking on radio to China, to Bulgaria, to Sweden, to India, to the United Kingdom, to Canada, to Chile, and to a number of people in the United States about this experience. The very first show that I was on in a studio, the man said to me, the Israeli government has said that the people on those boats were, paraphrased, Iranian-backed fundamentalist Shiite murdering killer savages, terrorists. How do you answer that? I said, well, I would start by considering the source and understanding that it was highly unlikely that they would describe us as tree-hugging pacifists. Of course we had to be nasty people, otherwise they would not have been justified in what they were doing. I have since had a number of discussions with people who did not agree with what I was doing, with what I said. And I know one individual who said, the blockade of Gaza on the seaward side is to keep weapons from going into Gaza. I said, well, if that is the reason, what is the reason for the blockade on the landward side of Gaza? Do we expect weapons to come from Israel into Gaza? And why is there a blockade on Palestinian exports going into Israel? Do you expect that they're going to ship weapons into Israel? The whole thing is a farce and a fiasco. It's also illegal. Gaza does not belong to Israel. Israel has no right to prevent people and things from going in and out, but they can do it because there's nobody prepared to stop them. There are flotillae. Can you make that a plural? Is there a Latin teacher in the crowd? Okay, flotillas. That sounds more American. There are flotillas going to Gaza this fall, as many of you know. One of them is being written up here, the U.S. to Gaza. There wasn't one last time. There will be one this time. Consider this. No one in his or her right mind, let me repeat, no one in his or her right mind, and everyone here recognizes that not everybody is qualified for inclusion in that group. But no one in their right mind wants anything bad to happen to one Israeli, one Palestinian, or one American. But the horror of the situation is that horrible things have happened, are happening, and are going to happen to all three groups. And I hope I'm wrong, but I fear I am not. You cannot do what is being done to the Palestinians in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, and in Gaza without somebody expressing to you their discontent with that arrangement. They don't have to be rational. Many of them are. Many of them feel very strongly regretful that they have to resort to violence, but they see no other path, no other choice. I have twice worn the uniform of my country in time of war, and I've been out on the front lines as a diplomat in civilian clothing through wars and riots and coups and life-threatening diseases and attacks on the house I lived in and attacks on the building I worked in and evacuations and separations, and I do not take a backseat to anyone in terms of patriotism. This is the greatest country that ever was. It could be the greatest country that ever will be, but that is not a universally shared perception. Certainly not in the Middle East, and certainly not amongst the 1.5 billion people